Hello there, everybody, and welcome to another segment of our program, Black in Laguna Woods. I'm Alan Feldman from the Laguna Woods Democratic Party, and I want to thank everybody for taking their time for joining us today. Today, we are going to be speaking with Annie McCrary. Now, a lot of people in Laguna Woods Village know Annie McCrary already. Annie is president, I believe it's president of the African American Heritage Club.
Yes.
She sits on the board of directors of the Third Mutual Board of Directors, and she's really been quite active around Laguna Woods for quite some time. So we're going to speak to Annie today about a new endeavor she's starting, I guess you call it a new chapter in her life. Annie McCrary has decided to run for the Laguna Woods City Council. That's an office that covers the city of Laguna Woods, not just Laguna Woods Village. So we're going to speak about that today, but before we do, Annie, let me welcome you and thank you so much for taking your time to speak with us today. It's really greatly appreciated.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, my pleasure. Annie's also been on this program a couple of times already, so you may know her from that also, our wide audience here, But before we get into the nuts and bolts of the whys and what your plans are for the City Council, can you tell people a little bit about yourself, where you came from, how you got here? Now, as I recall, you are not a native of California.
You're right. No, I'm not a native, and I'm here by way of a little town called Planosville, Alabama, which is about 15 miles outside of the city of Selma.
Okay.
I was born and raised in Alabama, went to school in Alabama, and left after graduating from high school and came to California.
Then did you move with your family, or did you move by yourself to California?
I moved with my brother. I have a brother that lives here, and he invited me to come and explore California and look at what type of career I wanted for myself and see if I even liked California to stay.
I guess you did.
Apparently. Yes, love it, absolutely.
And let me just, before we plunge forward, I want to plunge backwards for just a minute. Plantersville, Alabama, just outside of Selma, and I know it's a small town because I know you told me once, you said, I asked you if you came from a rural area, you said, what's smaller than rural? And when you left for California, was that an economic, did you just not see a life for yourself, economic, socially, in a small town like that? Did you have bigger plans, or was it simply just a young person looking to explore things?
Well, I didn't. The reason I left is because there really wasn't much of a future there for me in terms of a career. And in my head, I always wanted to be a nurse. And so I was looking for a place to settle into so I could begin my career as a nurse. I had an aunt in Pennsylvania who was a nurse, and she said, well, come to Pennsylvania and I'll help you with your nursing career. And my brother said, well, come to California and decide if you even like nursing. We can go to Long Beach City College and take some classes. And so...
opportunity.
Absolutely.
Opportunity.
Very supportive family.
Yeah. And you became a nurse practitioner, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. My last stint in nursing was a family nurse practitioner.
Yeah. How did you like that?
I loved it. I just have, there's something in me that just cannot help wanting to help. And so I went as far as I could with my nursing career, and then I retired. But I love the career of nursing.
I have to ask you something I ask anybody who does any kind of nursing work at all. It has nothing to do with anything, but how long did it take you to be able to give shots to people?
It didn't take very long.
Really?
It didn't take, because we had to practice on each other. As nursing students, to give shots, we had to give each other shots. So we figured out, at least I knew how badly it hurted when someone gave me a shot, so I made it a point to be as gentle as I could with giving shots.
I always wonder about that. Geez, how does anybody get junky, for God's sakes, giving yourself an injection? Anyway, I think that was besides the point. Let's get to the point now. You have been involved in village governance. You've been on the board of directors for the Third Mutual.
Yes.
Right. What made you decide to kind of expand the horizons and move out to the city?
Well, what made me decide to do that was my desire to be of service and my desire to help seniors and know what's important for seniors. And when I was born, I wasn't a senior.
Yeah.
And so as I grew older, I started to recognize some of the stuff that really affects seniors and the quality of our lives. And so serving on the Homeowners Association board gave me a really good idea of what it's like to work with a group of people with different ideas and different values and come together as a group of people, whether we agree on every issue or not,
Right.
but working together for the good of the community.
And had you had any kind of, were you politically active before? Have you ever had any ambitions to run for office? Is this basically something you thought you would ever do?
No, it's not anything that was on my radar at all. And when I came here, I moved to Laguna Woods to retire, and just my husband and I live happily ever after and not do anything.
Right.
And one day there was an opportunity to serve on the Homeowners Association board at Third Mutual. So I just thought, well, I'll try my hand at it and see what it's like. And it's really been an amazingly incredible experience working in a community like this.
That's what I wanted to ask you. And that's how is that experience? How did you find that experience?
And it continues to be a rewarding experience because, and I've gone through several years where we've had changeover in board members, and the fact that we all work together so well. Whether we don't always agree on everything, but we do agree that we're there to serve the community and to serve the residents in the community, and we put our own agendas aside and work for the good of the community.
Yeah, that's I'm curious about that because I have lived in all sorts of different circumstances. I've lived in New York City, 8 million people. I lived in a town in southeastern Massachusetts, 5,000 people. I never felt like I lived in a real community until I moved to Laguna Woods. Walking down the street on a hot day and somebody pulls up and asks if you need a ride.
Yes.
Hey, can I help you with those packages? Or hold on with that, I'll give you a hand with that.
Absolutely.
People just come up to you on the street and do it. It is a real feeling of community, and I wonder if people who live here are aware of that, how much different this really is from most other places.
I think they are. Part of what I do as on the Homeowners Association board for Third Mutual is we get to welcome new residents when they come in, and so we do a new resident orientation
Right.
where we talk about the most amazing experiences that people have living in the community and how people look out for each other.
Yeah.
So for the majority of people, I think they are aware.
Yeah, I hope so, because it really is something else. So let's move outside the gates here and move to the city council. And I guess the first question would be, why do you want to serve on the city council? What do you think you can do? What would you like to accomplish?
Well, I would like to accomplish being that additional voice for the residents, and not just Laguna Woods Village, but for the whole city of Laguna Woods. I have experience working with groups, small groups and large groups, and I get along well with others. And there are issues that affect seniors in a small community like this that, while there may not be an issue right now in terms of a problem, having some insight into what affects our community and having some insight into how to interact with legislators and how to advocate for the community. Those are things that I didn't think that I had it in me to do in the beginning, but having served on the board and dealing with people is just it's an amazingly rewarding experience.
Yeah, it's funny when things you think you'll never do, when you start doing them, you realize, well, this is pretty easy. I like this. And what would you hope to accomplish on the city council?
I would hope to accomplish. That's a really good question. So first of all, I want to be a listening ear, not whether something is wrong or whether it's right, just for people to be able to say, I know Annie McCary, she listens and she responds and she takes action, even if it's just picking up the phone and calling someone back.
Right. So talking about constituent services and,
Yes,
and so forth.
yes.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, let's move down. I guess there are, of course. I mean, well, before we even get to that, let me ask you about how important you think it is having diversity on the city council. And diversity, I don't mean just the things that people think of all the time, ethnic, racial, religious diversity, but I'm talking about diversity of people's backgrounds. You know, so politics, local office always seem to be reserved for people who are either attorneys or, quote, small business owners. They seem to rule the roost. That's changing somewhat now. And how important do you think that is? And,
I think is very important, almost critically important, for there to be the diversity in terms of age, diversity in terms of background, diversity in thinking, diversity, certainly healthcare. When I'm thinking about how I can serve the people in the Laguna Woods area, I can hear something and my medical knowledge will kick in.
Yeah.
And I can say, oh, perhaps we should be looking at prescription drugs, or perhaps we need to be looking at a different mode of transportation for seniors. Perhaps we should be looking at wheelchair accessibility, those kinds of things that as a nurse, they probably kick in for me a lot quicker than for maybe someone that without the healthcare background.
No, that's right. Everybody who comes from a different background would have a different approach to any particular problem.
Exactly.
And I guess that the best thing to do, if possible, is meld them all together and come up with the best possible solution.
Exactly.
Best possible solution. So let's get to some of the issues that that are, I don't know, plaguing or that are around Laguna Woods Village, and also they would include also Laguna Woods. Laguna Woods Village. And the first one, we'll start with the first one because I'm sure you'll have a little experience with this in Laguna Woods Village, transportation. We've had this bus system in Laguna Woods Village, which has been, I guess you could call it, in a constant state of flux for the last 5 or 6 years. But even beyond the not just about that, but I know you must have had to deal with that. How big an issue do you think transportation in our area is? And what do you think needs to be done, and what do you think of the strengths of the system right now?
Absolutely. Transportation is a huge issue, especially for us as seniors, because many of us at some point in time will give up our vehicles for driving. Many may not have other ways of getting around. So some kind of a transportation system that can accommodate us as we age, that can accommodate mobility, that can accommodate handrails, just so that we can feel safe when we're being transported. Even if it's just going up to the grocery store, you want to be on a transportation system that you feel safe with, and it's reliable.
Yeah, I think that's safety and reliability. That is, I think if people have a complaint about public transportation here and everywhere else, is the reliability of it. Some of it is, some of it, it's just that if you're waiting for a bus or a train, it's not in your control. So we always feel out of control. Yeah. When is it coming? Is it coming? Will I get on? I don't know. How do we make people realize, other than just ensuring that things do run on time, how do we make people feel that the transportation system is reliable, that you don't need to bring their car? Especially if they don't feel comfortable driving. They don't need to bring their car. They can take a bus. They can take a train.
Well, I think first of all, we show them the value of it. And when you're dealing with a community with over 18,000 residents, and everybody wanting transportation and wanting to get someplace, there are going to be some times when there might be some delays. And so the idea is to be aware of the issues with transportation, be aware of maybe some other alternatives. So if you're not taking the bus, maybe an Uber or maybe a Lyft or something like that, so that we keep your needs in the forefront of our mind, but also we want some flexibility, and we don't want to set people up to believe that there's never going to be a delay with transportation. Yeah. And so I think communication is very key. Just this is what we have, and we continue to work to improve the transportation system to make it better, and we ask that you work with us. Give us your feedback. Yeah. Talk to us about what your idea, if you don't like this mode of transportation, if you got some ideas, let's get a group of people together and talk about what the ideas are. Let's look at the feasibility of that and see if it's something that can be worked out. Right.
And when we look outside the gates of the people who live in Laguna, the city of Laguna Woods outside the gates, transportation is a big issue of getting to work. It's always in many of the urban communities, the poor, underserved, underprivileged sections of town, there's no transportation. There might be a bus, take a bus to another bus, to a subway, to another bus. It takes you an hour and a half to get someplace. And I imagine that in some areas here, some people who live in Laguna Woods, it's the same thing. There's no easy way to get where they're going. It's an economic hindrance. It stops a vibrant economy. First of all, do you think that's true? And do you think there's anything that can be done about it? I mean, I don't know how much pull the city of Laguna Woods would have in, helping to regionalize and connect the transportation systems. But what do you think about that?
Well, when you look at the transportation system in all of Orange County, it's just amazing. You see the OCTA buses,
right.
The big buses, the small buses. So I think we have such a wide variety of transportation modalities, whether it's the city bus, the little bus that comes through our village, the age-well transportation system, the lift system. I think there's a lot that's already provided, and it's just a matter of looking and listening to the people, the residents, to see if they've got some ideas to make it better. But I think if you look at the Orange County transportation system and the Laguna Woods transportation system, I think we've got a good system. And here in Laguna Woods, Village Management Service, I think they're doing a great job at constantly looking at the transportation system. And they do a great job of getting feedback from the community in terms of what works really well, what doesn't work, and what can we do to make it better. So I think that ongoing communication, that ongoing back and forth, listening to what people want, listening to what they have to say, and taking some of it into consideration if it's something that can be changed.
Yeah, that is an important thing, isn't it, when it comes to getting input from people, just making people feel that their opinions count as much as anybody else. Your opinion counts, and we will take it into consideration when making a decision. People don't always feel like that, or always haven't in the past felt like that.
Yes, and that's and I think that's a big problem that could be very easily corrected. Everybody deserves to be heard,
Right.
and we all, I don't say we all, many times people don't listen. We're hearing, but we're not listening.
Right.
And as we're hearing, we're trying to fix the problem. But if we're listening, we're engaged with that person one-on-one, understanding, giving them the impression that you really are being heard. I hear you. I listen to you.
Right. And what you say counts. Yeah.
It does matter what everybody. I believe everyone's opinion matters.
Okay. Well, we got to get off the bus now. We'll get off the bus and into our house. Another issue, which is of course important all over, but that is the issue of housing. Now, there are certain specific issues within Laguna Woods Village as far as rentals and rights of people who are renting and property owners and stuff like that. But I want to start anyway outside the village. A lot of the part of Laguna Woods, a lot of Laguna Woods is taken up with facilities for people. The memory care facilities, rehab facilities, and so forth. But there's sections where regular people live. Regular people, just working people. They live there. They commute to work every day. Do you think we have housing, I don't know what you'd call it, a problem, a crisis? Is there something that we can do to improve and expand the stock of housing, quote, affordable housing in our area?
And that's another really great question. And homelessness is not relegated to the warm climates anymore. Right. At one point, where a warm climate like California, you would see a lot of homeless people, but that's not the case now. Homelessness is a nationwide issue, and what's concerning for me is I care about all people, but I'm really concerned about seniors that are homeless, and making sure, or just addressing the reasons why they're homeless. If they don't want a place to live, that's certainly their right. I think we can continue to look at what we're providing in terms of housing for all residents. And because it's just not, It's not comfortable for me as a human being to see or to know that another human being doesn't have a place to sleep at night or doesn't have a place to take a shower.
Right. It is such a complex problem. People talk about the homeless problem, but it's not the homeless problem. There are the homeless problems. There are people suffering from substance abuse,
Mental illness.
There are people who don't want to be in a house, they don't want to be housed. They like to live out on the street. There are people who did lose their house because they had to pay medical bills and they went bankrupt or they lost their job. And it's kind of difficult for a one-size-fits-all problem, I think. And people,
It is, absolutely.
And I think, and you tell me what you think of this. It's not so much here. We live, let's face it, we do live in a bubble in many ways. We're very well protected. We're like domesticated beasts. We're well taken care of. They come with our grain every day, pour it out. But does Laguna Woods have a place in this? Is it possible for Laguna Woods to add something to this? Be part of a solution to housing people?
And that's another great question. Laguna Woods itself, that's something that needs to be, because Golden Rain Foundation owns the land, so
Right.
we don't own the land. And so what I know for sure is that every couple of years, the Laguna Woods City Council does take a look at this issue about whether or not we have room to add additional homes. So it is something that's being looked at the city council level.
Yeah. Yeah, it's we saw it's during the pandemic. We had when people were when the program to possibly house people at the Ayers Hotel came along. It generated a lot of shall we say heat.
It did.
Against it. And it seemed to me, and I ask you this too, if you feel, it seemed to me that was kind of out of character for Laguna Woods in many ways. Maybe not, but from what I've seen, it seemed like it was kind of out of character, and it seemed like it was a product of fear.
Yes.
More than anything else. So I wonder if, if it's, and I worked in this field too many years ago in Massachusetts, and I know that people fear, they don't know, they just fear that homeless people, low-income people are going to bring all sorts of problems to their neighborhood. And what do you think about that? Do you think that that's so? And it seems to me that that's a tough problem to overcome. It really is a tough problem to overcome.
It is a tough problem to overcome. And how do you tell someone? You don't just say, "Oh, you don't have to fear that." Again, it's a matter of listening to people and allowing them the opportunity to voice their fears in a way that they don't get judged harshly because they have a fear.
Right.
And so I think that's our starting point, is to be able to listen to people and get to the root of their fear. Are they really afraid that the city is going to be taken over by drug abusers or murderers? There may be some validity to that.
Right.
But we can't just say, you have no reason, there's no basis for your fear. We got to sit down, we got to talk to people. And unfortunately, the incident with the Ayers Hotel got snowballed so quickly that the energy was just so strong that there was no getting in the midst of that to calm the fears.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it was. It really did seem like it was out of character. It just doesn't seem like that's the way the parts of Laguna Woods that I've been privy to see didn't seem. It surprised me.
Yeah, and the other part of that is a lot of what I heard people say were they weren't given any feedback into making this decision.
Well, that's true.
So again, if you feel powerless, someone else is making decisions for you without your input, then that could bring up some fear, some resentment, and some acting out of character.
Yeah, that's the whole thing we were talking about. You're being heard.
Yes.
You're being heard, and can't guarantee that we'll go along with it, but it'll be taken under consideration. If people feel that, they're much more likely. And I think also what you said about people, if you're listening to what people are saying, then perhaps they don't feel they have to say it in such a vociferous, let us say, vociferous manner. Their point will get across. I'm listening to you. Your point is getting across. You don't have to put it in strident terms. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, and speaking of that, that's one of the main reasons I believe that we continue to deal with hatred and abuse of people, because this fear with people aren't being heard or not feeling safe. And so sometimes it might seem like the logical thing to do is to hate someone or disrespect someone. And that's just not the case.
Yeah, can push it away.
Push it away.
Keep it
We wanna-
away.
yeah.
Not here. We got to move on because we are running out of time, as of course we always do. So I'm going to ask you one last topic here,
Okay.
which is always on people's mind, whether sometimes real, sometimes imagined. That is the problem or the issue of crime. And it's there's two ways. There's crime and people's fear of crime, which is certainly legitimate. Everybody, especially older people, we're vulnerable. But there's also the economic aspect of it, and what I'm talking about here is here in Laguna Woods Village, where there is almost no crime. Almost. There's some, but there's almost no crime. But we spend, I think the biggest part of the budget, a big part of the budget of the city council too, is for services from the sheriff's department. So you think we're getting our money's worth? and I'm not talking to fund the police, to fund the sheriff. I'm talking, do we need as much from them as we get? Do you think that we do? Now, I know you may not be privy to all the statistics and information until you get on the city council, but just, your general opinion.
Well, first of all, the Orange County Sheriff Department, if you don't need them, great. If you only need them once and they're available, then it pays for itself right there.
No,
So
that's a very good point.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just appreciate just the knowing that and I tell new residents, because our security people that we have here, they're not law enforcement officers,
Right.
and so they don't carry guns. And I just say, you know what? All they have to do is call the Orange County Sheriff Department, and they are right there.
Yeah.
And, our police chief that we've got now, I'm sure he would echo the same. It's better to have them and don't need them than
Absolutely.
to need them and not have
Absolutely.
them.
And do you? So they are, as far as you know. I think we have 1 minute left here. So, as far as you know, your experience and from what people have told you, you think that they're pretty responsive. The Orange County Sheriff's Office, when somebody calls, the Orange County Sheriff's Office is responsive. They're there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because I know people, it doesn't matter whether it's real or whether it isn't. I know people who live here, they move from big city and they just can't get used to the idea that you can actually leave your window open, leave your door open. It's a whole new ballgame.
Yeah, I think there's a greater sense of safety and security,
Yes.
especially in Laguna Woods Village, than there is a feeling of fear.
Yeah. Well, Annie McCrary, we are out of time.
Thank you.
So I want to thank you so much for talking with us today. And I want to wish you nothing but the best of luck in your race for Laguna Woods City Council.
Thank you.
And we have run out of time, so I just, for people who are watching, Annie McCrary is running for the city council. She's just the kind of person we want in our local government. Kind of like old time from the small city in the Midwest. The person who's got abilities, energy, and opinions, and wants to use them and wants to give back to the community. So Annie McCrary is running for this for city council she's the right person running for the city council, and she's running for the city council for the right reasons. And so look for her name on the ballot. Annie will be running in the November election. You'll have an opportunity to vote for her. And in the meantime, I want to thank you all so much for watching us today, and taking the time out to watch Black in Laguna Woods. And we will be back in the next next month or so, and we'll be happy to speak to you again. Until then, we'll see you soon. Thank you very much.